unity and community. We talked about serving and not just our own communities, but the communities at large. And the third point I wanted to make was around patience. So Ramadan fosters patience, and it encourages self-discipline and restraint through that fasting and through the reflection and through that heightened spiritual awareness and practice. I'll say for myself, food isn't really the big challenge. You have your meal in the morning. Right now it's around 6:04. We'll go until 6:20-ish, and then begin eating. And before anyone asks, like, no, I don't gorge from 7:20 till 6:04 a.m. Like, that's not how it works out. Your stomach is only so big. But for me, the big challenge isn't the food, it's not the water, it's the sleep. Seema mentioned that I'm a coffee fan, and so I don't really do coffee during Ramadan. It throws off my sleep schedule, but the bigger problem is just the sleep. So typically, I'm coming home at midnight after prayers, and then I'm up at around 5:45 to have breakfast, and then I have work because we still have our daily jobs, right? And so doing that for a month, you're sort of in zombie mode, and that's a challenge, right? And my wife, I'm sure, will say that I get hangry. I don't. But you compound that with lack of sleep plus being hungry, right? And that's where the patience kicks in, right? Is to be patient and to slow down, to be thoughtful, and not get angry, right? Not explode. But the act of fasting is a way to strengthen one's ability to resist temptations, right? My son, my 12-year-old son, this is his first year fasting the entire month, and I'm sure he gets the urge to sneak a bar of chocolate or gummies or marshmallows or something, right? But you have to resist that temptation, and I think that's a valuable lesson, right? Is that you don't just go on your impulse, but you're thoughtful and you're deliberate and you're God conscious, and that you remain focused on your higher goals. You have that goal at the end of the day is that I want to make it till iftar time, which is 7:20-ish. But I think the big important lesson is that you can carry that lesson throughout your everyday life, right? Is that if you have an irritating, friend or neighbor or council member, which never happens, or employee or worker, coworker, whatever it is, right? Like or even if you're driving in your car, right? You don't just go with the impulse of road rage. Is that you try to calm down, and sure you can scream with your windows up, right? But you don't act on it, right? And that's part of it, is that you resist on those temptations, that impulse. And some of you know that I'm a runner, and so I always like bringing running analogies. For me, Ramadan is like running a marathon. It requires sustained endurance. It requires dedication, and it requires a lot of mental strength, because for the runners in the room, when you're running or training for a marathon, you hit that point where you just like hit a wall, and you can very easily stop, but you just got to keep going. And once you get past that hump, it's easy. It's smooth sailing, at least for the people that like running. I know not everyone does. And just like running a marathon, you have to pace yourself in order to reach that finish line. And for Muslims, it's this balance between spiritual practice, fasting, and your daily responsibilities for an entire month. And it's challenging, right? There are competing priorities. How do you deal with your family? How do you deal with work? How do you deal with getting the most that you can in connecting with God during this month? Any superhero fans, comic book fans in the room? All right. So what takes Superman down? Kryptonite, right? And I wish there was an opposite of kryptonite, like an anti-kryptonite. Some people say it's the sun that like sort of recharges him. But Ramadan is my anti-kryptonite, because when I come out of the month, I have absolute willpower. I feel like I could take on the mountain. I feel like I could take on the world, because for an entire month, you've given up food, you've given up drink, and you've given up sleep. So you come out and you're just fully recharged and you're ready to go. You're also filled with determination. And I sort of feel like a superhero, right, at the end of the month. It's a beautiful feeling. And during the month itself, there's an increased level of focus. How many of you swim? All right. The rule is you can't go into the pool for 30 minutes. Do you know why? It's not that you're going to throw up. It's because all of your blood rushes to your belly, right? And you could seize up, right? You could have major issues. And it's the same thing, is that when you're fasting, your body isn't focused on digesting food. And you have a heightened level of spirituality for sure, but you have also an increased level of focus, because you can use your brain to its 100%. You have the blood flowing 100% to your brain as opposed to your stomach. There are numerous pro athletes. I know one when I was growing up, Hakeem Olajuwon, used to fast while playing in the NBA. He would break all sorts of records, and I would look at him as a hero because he was fasting and he was observing the fast, but he was also excelling professionally, right? He was just an amazing basketball player, but he would do it in just such an amazing way. And there are other numerous examples of pro athletes, a lot now, especially in soccer. I can't imagine running for 90 minutes straight while fasting, but they do it. So the month of Ramadan is often viewed as a spiritual, or described as a spiritual illumination, this concept of light, where fasting and prayer and reflection bring this clarity that I was describing, as well as an enlightenment of the soul, of the heart. And just like light dispels darkness, Ramadan helps individuals purify their hearts and illuminates their paths with faith and strength and connection with the divine. And literally, Ramadan is marked by lights. It's often marked by lanterns and lights. People decorate their homes. And so I'd like to end with a short supplication which emphasizes the seeking of divine guidance, clarity, and spiritual illumination in every aspect of one's life. And the prayer goes, "O God, place light in my heart, and light in my sight, and light in my hearing, and light in my sight, light on my left, and light above me, and light below me, and light in front of me, and light behind me, and make light for me." And speaking of light, I'm also reminded of the prayer of Jonah, peace be upon him. Prophet Jonah was trapped in the belly, and if any of you have gone snorkeling or scuba diving, you know that the ocean is absolutely dark. And when he was in the darkness of the belly, so not only was he in the ocean, but he was in the depths of, he was in the belly of a whale, which was inside the ocean. He made a very beautiful, concise and profound prayer, which is, there is no deity except you, meaning God. Exalted are you. Indeed, I have been in the wrongdoers. And this is a way that we understand our sort of place in life and where we stand. Often, I feel like we're too easy to blame others and we don't look introspectively. O God, grant peace and stability to the world, ease the suffering of those in pain, and provide comfort and relief to hearts burdened by hardship. Truly, you are the most merciful and the source of all solace. And I just realized that I skipped over. No, I think I'm good. We talked about service, we talked about unity. Thank you. It's Ramadan brain. I'd like to open it up to questions or comments that people might have. Yes, in the back. So the question was if we fast only in the month of Ramadan or outside of the month of Ramadan. And so there are specific days. So the requirement is Ramadan. And then there are specific days that are advised. There are numerous days throughout the year that are sort of highlights. And then the Prophet himself would fast from on Mondays and Thursdays and the middle of each month. So it's a standard practice. I typically do the special days and then the month of Ramadan. All right, if there are no questions, I'm going to start asking you questions. All right, I'm going to ask my first question to Mayor Marchand. Is water allowed? All right, good, good. Very nice. I think that's one of my most common questions when people ask me about Ramadan is not even water. Any other questions? Yes. I did not go over it, but it's a good question. So there's a verse in the Quran, the translation of which is, fasting has been prescribed for you as it has been for nations of the past, so that you may gain God consciousness. The Arabic word is taqwa. I think the loosest or the closest translation is, or concisest translation is God consciousness, but it's a balance between loving God and fearing God, and it's being aware of God. And that's really the purpose of it, right? Because I could go to a corner and sneak a candy bar or a Cliff Bar or something, right? And I'd be totally fine. No one would know, but God would know. And that's that heightened level of spiritual awareness. All right. Go for it. Supervisor.
Not so much a question, but just a comment to say. This was an amazing enlightenment for me personally, I think many of us, for you to share your self with us, but the learning that you provided us, so many facts that I didn't know about. But as I reflect on what you said, it reminds me we're more the same than we're different. And that's the unity that you preached. And I can see themes of service in many cultures. Service above self for Rotarians, seva for Sikh and Hindus, charity in other religions. We have so much. You talked about the prophets and Moses. So many things that we have in common that allow us to not let smaller things that divide us to not do that. Very special. I appreciate you and I appreciate the community for opening the mosque here for us. It is my first time in this mosque, but the blue mosque counts, I think.
100%.
Okay,
Beautiful mosque. Yeah.
You did an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to say thank you so much. And that's my second time to be here. Every time I was very impressed by how the unity is here inside of this room, and I feel the spiritual energy here. I do have a question. How many times you pray every day, and what's the specific timing?
Right. So there's a cheat code on my left, which has the prayer times. But it's so Muslims pray 5 times a day. The first one is ends before dawn. So you can start at pre-dawn and ends at dawn. The second one comes after the solar noon, so not 12 o'clock, but after that. Right now it's roughly 1 o'clock. Third prayer is early evening, which right now is around 6 o'clock. And then the fourth prayer of the day is what we'll all pray in about 20 minutes. And then the final prayer is in the evening at night. Typically the prayers are, let's say, 3 to 5 minutes. In Ramadan, there's a very special prayer where people that have memorized the entire Quran, the holy book of Muslims, will recite nearly 1/30th of it each night. And so that's the long prayer that I was mentioning in the night. So it starts at around 9 p.m. and will end around 11:30. And so they'll, from memory, folks will recite small bits of it, completing the entire Quran over the course of the month. It's an amazing experience.
Hopefully not getting into your schedule of praying. One quick question. I truly appreciate tonight's message, and there's a lot that I like to share with my children when I go back. Speaking of children, at what age do they start practicing fasting?
Yeah, typically it's around 12 or 13 when they begin fasting. I think my son did it for sport a couple times before. We, kind of make a celebration out of it, but typically around 12, 13 is when they're considered an adult, and then they begin to fast full time. I've got a question in the back, and then. The question is if there are specific prayers during the 5 prayers during the day. So there's specific portions of it. There's like specific rituals that are involved, steps. I know one of our guests this evening experienced the pre-prayer aspects, which is wudu. It's ablution. So before you pray, you wash yourself, and there's a very specific format for that. And then the prayer has a very specific format. There are portions in there that you can sort of freestyle, right? And things that are in your heart that you want to ask for. I'm sure my son is asking for gaming systems or something, right? Like you can ask for those sorts of things as well. And then there's like a very regimented piece of it as well. And I think there's portions that are translated in the pamphlets that are in front of you. Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to kind of speak to the comment that you made about, how fasting kind of, gives you strength. I think the theme of kind of sacrifice is very prevalent in like a lot of Abrahamic faiths. I think about Yom Kippur, for example, in which, fasting is also a theme, and during the Inquisition, during which both Muslims and Jews were prosecuted by the Spanish crown, Yom Kippur was also a time for Jews who had to do what they had to do to survive, to kind of forgive themselves. On the topic of strength, my comrade Hashem and his family, in South Gaza, he said this to me. Tomorrow is the first day of Ramadan, and so we have to fast for 15 hours. So we really love this month, as fasting renews our morale and helps us recover more and feel more spiritual with God, especially for those for whom, due to the Israeli blockade, do not have a choice, whether or not they fast.
Got a question in the front as well.
I can be loud. So first of all, thank you so much. I really appreciated your invite, and so thank you for inviting us here today to share this time with you. For those of us, we came out all, I think, to learn and for community and really to educate ourselves. After this, if we want to learn more, are there times that are best to visit again? Are there times that are open to the public just to come and learn and converse? Perhaps not for people who are necessarily religious, but really just want to, see and learn more of the community.
Good question. So I'm looking for Brother Munir. I don't see him here, but he's. Go ahead.
Typically, the doors of MCC are always open. You can feel free to join us. Also, I can share, look it up, what's the best email, and I can send an email if you want to email and make an appointment. You can do that as well. But Fridays, there's always a lot of people here, and if you come in during any of our, prayer times, you can visit during the prayer time. You can meet a lot of the community, and we can also answer any questions that you have. But the doors are always open for anyone who would like to learn. Yep.
Absolutely. Did you want
Hi, thanks for doing this. And I will say that I, before COVID, used to come more, and on Fridays often I would bring bread, and it really is such a warm and welcoming community. So I want to thank you for having us and for doing this and sharing your rituals with us. So I read in the pamphlet, I was cheating, I read a little bit, that at the end of Ramadan, your sins are forgiven, I think is what it said in the pamphlet. Is that right? I don't want to misrepresent.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Okay. Which is interesting because, I observe Yom Kippur, we get it one day. You have to do 30. So to your point, it takes real dedication and focus. But what is that during those days? You talked a little bit about prayer, but how does that piece of it play into the ritual? I was curious about that.
The forgiveness
The
part.
forgiveness piece.
Yeah. So according to Islamic tradition, there are three sort of parts of Ramadan. The first one is about mercy, and the second one is about forgiveness. And currently, we're in the second 10 days of Ramadan. So there's an increase in prayers, supplications. I mentioned during the prayers, there's rituals, right? There's certain things that we would do, and hopefully, you're all welcome to observe for the sunset prayer, post-sunset prayer. But then afterwards, there's supplications that happen, and that's when you would ask for God's mercy and ask for His forgiveness. None of us are perfect. My wife will definitely attest to that. But we all have our shortcomings, right? And we all sin. We all do. We're not always doing the right thing, and so this is an opportunity, an extra opportunity. And according to Islamic tradition, God is more willing to accept your forgiveness and accept your shortcomings during this month because of that heightened spirituality. And did you want to introduce yourself?
The Assembly Member Rebecca Barkane.
Was there a question in the back? I think your question was about. I just remembered something. You were asking about why you fast, and I mentioned that fasting was prescribed for you. Or I'm sorry, the gentleman beside you was asking about other days that we fast. So there's actually one interesting day that we fast, which is the day that Moses was saved from being from the Pharaoh before he was drowned in the Nile Red Sea, split. And that day is important, obviously, to the Jewish tradition. It's also important to the Muslim tradition. And in honoring the prophet Moses, we fast that day. We also fast either the day before it or after it because it's special to us. And there are days like that, highlights of the year that a lot of Muslims fast. I think there may be another question in the back. Sorry.
For Islam, or is it more kind of grassroots and organic? And is there any central body that determines practice or performance or doctrine or anything like that?
No, good question. There's no central Vatican per se. Some of that was just through wars and conquest in terms of who sort of ruled certain areas, but there's no central body per se. There are different leagues and organizations that try to set standards. In the U.S., there is one. I would say it's more countrywide as opposed to international. Within the U.S., there are two big organizations that coordinate a lot of activities, coordinate a lot of mosque activities and things within the states, but no central governing body like the Catholic Church. Yes.
So you speak of unity, and the opposite would be division. So between the contrast and the two, I'm wondering about suffering. So like in Buddhism, it seems like suffering is a requirement. And then we have somebody like J. Krishnamurti is essentially saying suffering's stupid. So I'm wondering about how Islam, its relationship to suffering, and then counter to patience, because it seems like patience is an enabler of suffering. So I'm wondering about those views.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. So patience is enduring, but that doesn't mean just turning the other cheek, right? You have to do your part. There's a famous prophetic tradition in that you tie your camel and then trust God, right? You don't just trust God and leave your camel to roam, right? You do your part and then you put your trust in God. and there's no real concept of suffering like as a way to get closer to God. Like you don't physically beat yourself up to get closer to God. But this world isn't lined with roses, right? They're thorns. and so kind of dealing with that and taking that in stride is the perspective that I would add. And I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything to that. I'm looking around.
Hi, council member. My question is kind of speaking to what you raised earlier about the fact that when you take part in these fasts, that in a way it's an act of empathy for those who go without. I'm wondering, I guess, in some ways, like what are the acts of service that typically like either yourself or other members of like that practice will take part in during the month?
So if I understood the question, it was what acts of worship? So
acts of service.
Acts of service. Okay. So a lot of people, like obviously this event, right? These chairs didn't just magically appear, right? So there were folks behind the scenes that are setting up the chairs. The mosque is typically packed at nights, and so there's a lot of service that goes into that. You know, cleaning, vacuuming, you know, freshening up the restrooms and things like that. And obviously, there's some paid folks, and then there's a lot of volunteers. You'll see that there's a lot of people coming here for iftar and dinner, and so there's a lot of service that goes into that, right? But as I was mentioning earlier, I think service to one's own community is very important. I know that there are a lot of food banks or food drives that are happening. There are actually young students that organized a food drive at all of the Dublin Unified School District schools, right? And so there are those. There's I know some schools have done a fast-a-thon where basically take the money that you would have spent on lunch and donate it to a different cause. There are all sorts of ideas that people do. As you know, I'm on council, right? You don't really get paid to be on council, right? And so I kind of see that as my service to the community. There's a lot of folks that are in here that are also in the Rotary, right? And just doing service for trying to make a global impact through service, right? And so they're, certainly don't have to be Muslim to serve the community, right? And being Muslim doesn't preclude you from serving others. Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for opening your home for us to experience this. You talked about your role in city council. How does your faith inform your actions and your decision making?
Oh man, putting me on the spot. So I'll preface what I'm going to say by saying that we all make mistakes, and we're not perfect, right? So I try to use faith as a moral compass. I try to use my values and morals in making the best decisions that I can, and shortcomings that I have aren't from the faith. It's for myself, right? And I try to do the best that I can. I use it as I take my job very seriously, and I'm sure the general manager will attest to the fact that I actually read through all of the packets, right? So I spend my time, I do my diligence. That's part of it, right? Is my faith teaches me to show excellence. The Arabic word is ihsan, right? And like, if you're going to do something, be the best at it, or try to do the best that you can. And I think that's kind of what drives me. And then just trying to do good, right? And using that as a moral compass. But again, I'm not perfect, and the shortcomings aren't from the faith. And I have made mistakes, and I will continue to do so, unfortunately. Other questions? How are you? We also have, I think I mentioned Assemblymember Rebecca Barakayan sitting in the front here, and then San Ramon Councilmember Marisol in the back. Did you have a question?
There really is so much overlap with other faiths because with Christians, we have Lent, so that's 40 days. Some people do fast during the day, some don't, but on Fridays they definitely aren't supposed to eat meat. There's more prayer than usual. We have Holy Week right between Palm Sunday, and that also crosses over with the Jewish faith. We have Holy Week, like I said, and then we have Holy Thursday and going to Triduum, and into Easter finally. We have Good Friday and then, Easter, which is technically our holiest day, but it's for the same purpose. It's for the purpose that, it's a time of reflection, a time of repentance and renewal, and, and forgiveness of sins, but also recognizing that we're trying to improve. We're highly imperfect creatures, and we're trying to be better. So thank you for sharing that. It really is a beautiful thing to share personally.
Thank you. Question? You just raised your hand. Now you got to ask a question. You're on the spot. This is my wife, Shireen, by the way.
Shireen's also a board member here at MCC. She does a lot.
All right, what are the questions that you were dying to ask? Here's your chance. No questions. All right, we've got one more in the back. Yes.
Women wear, is that for modesty or is it something else?
The question was about the head covering for women. I think my wife does it to not have to comb her hair. No, it's a sign of modesty. It's the prescription is for women to cover their hair and to dress modestly, and for men it's to dress modestly. Favorite meal to break fast with. So I'll say when I was growing up, it was pokore, right? Those fried. I don't know how to describe. Do you have a better description? Dumplings? Not quite. Fritters, maybe. I don't know. They're divine. But the older I'm getting, the greasy food just doesn't do it for me. So typically it's a date and water. Lately, I've been adding hydration powder to it, and then my favorite is actually fruit salad, and I don't put the spices in it. In case you're wondering, I don't think it's fair for the fruit to deal with that. Yes. Yeah, good question. So the question was the origin of dates for fasting, and I don't know the exact origin of it, but according to Islamic tradition, there are two moments of happiness for the fasting person, one of which is when you break your fast. And that moment of happiness, you want to have something sweet, and dates are sweet. Islam started in Arabia, where dates are plentiful, so I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. Maybe if it was in Iran, it would have been pomegranates. I don't know. But dates started there and have stuck, and it's become part of our tradition. But it's not a requirement. You certainly do not have to break your fast with a date. I love them. Yes.
Right. So the time to break fast is still in about 1 to 2 minutes. So if you can hold off for 1 to 2 minutes, retry it.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you say as you're breaking fast?
There are various prayers that you can say. I'll say the fundamental one is just that you're thanking God, right? That you've gone through the day, and that you pray that He accepts your fast as a form of worship. Yes. Question in the back. Yeah, the question was about changing their name if one were to convert. There's no requirement. If you want to, sure. If you don't, that's also fine. I think the only rule is it's personal preference. Unless you have like an evil name, and I don't have any good examples of those off the top of my head, but if you had something that was just a really bad name, then it'd be advisable to change it, but I think that would be for other reasons as well. Awesome. Well, with that, we will end. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope I haven't put any of you to sleep. Yeah, may God accept the fast of those who are fasting. May God bring us all closer together, have that heightened level of awareness and heightened level of community. Thank you so much.